Hey everyone, my name is Vasily. Welcome to the channel. Subscribe below. I'm going to be walking you through how I'm going to take this small shop space and do a full reorganization. So this was the first workbench that I built. This is the Paul Sellers designed workbench, and I absolutely love this thing. I built everything I've done so far on this bench, but it's just getting to be too small. And so the first project in reorganizing is I'm gonna have a finishing table. I'm gonna have a table for the 50 projects that I have, I'm in the middle of and haven't completed, so they can all sit over here. And so I can keep this table clean and work on my most current projects. So follow me over here to the corner and I'll show you guys the space that we're looking at. So this is the first corner that I'm going to be reorganizing. This is a cabinet I built for another project that I actually never got around to using. And here's a bunch of clutter from a bunch of other projects that I haven't got to, along with some more flooring for another project. So basically I'm going to take this whole corner and reorganize it. We're going to clear out this lovely mess and make this whole thing functional. So we're going to put in a finishing table. I'm going to organize all my finishing products into these drawers, put all the sanding equipment, basically so that all the finishing happens in this little corner and off of the main workbench. So I'm going to also reorganize this, which I've just been shoving rags, old gloves, extra light bulbs, and a bunch of other stuff. I'm gonna take all this out and just finally reorganize it so that everything is finishing only. So no more junk. Okay, so I cut the mortises for what's going to be the table legs, and I actually didn't cut the one on that side before I glued it up, but a really quick way to transfer the exact width of the mortise is just take a marking gauge. I'm using the Veritas marking gauge here, and I line the blade up exactly with the edge of it right here. Then just come to the other side, double check that it's equidistant, and then that transfers right over. And then I'll go ahead and go to my other side. And I'll just scribe that line right in there and do the same thing on the other side. Okay, then I go to my scribe line and I go ahead and loosen these two and then just micro adjust my router so that I'm sitting right on that scribe line. And then I go ahead and just plunge it down and then rotate the blade so that I'm right on the line. And then we're all lined up and ready to cut. Some rough mortises and tenons, so not too pretty just for the workbench, but still nice firm fit. And we should be good to go. And a little trick I use just to make sure that the tops line up is I cut the mortise a little bit long closer to this edge. That way if I need to bump it up, this can sit flush with this piece. Okay, for the next part of the process, we're going to be making the tabletop. So I actually opted to edge join some 2x12s and a 2x10 instead of just getting a sheet of plywood. I think it was around $70 still for a sheet of plywood, and these came out to be roughly about $40. So that's just going to give me a more stable tabletop surface and a sturdier workbench. Okay, so our tabletop's gonna sit on here. Here's the rest of the 2x10 and a 2x12. So we're gonna edge joint those, glue those up, and then get this tabletop on. All right, we ran these boards through the jointer, but since we're dealing with such big stock, I'm just gonna do a little bit of cleanup with my big Stanley number 7 plane. Get rid of, there's a couple snipe marks and just a couple areas where the board was wobbling. Okay, so we're gonna glue up this tabletop. Now, when you're gluing up panels, you always wanna alternate your growth rings because these boards are naturally gonna cup. And so if you alternate the growth rings, you're gonna prevent some of that cupping because the two boards are gonna be cupping opposite each other. If you glue them up with the growth rings orientated this way, they're probably gonna warp as this wood dries inward toward the growth ring. So on these big panel glue ups, a lot of times once you clamp everything together, they'll start to bow. So the best way to prevent that is if you have a couple big pieces of a 2x6 or even a 2x4, you can clamp it down at both ends and in the center, and then that'll put downward pressure on the whole panel and keep it level. So we have the tabletop all glued up, and the next step is just to flatten out all the edges where the two boards came together. Now, if you have an electric hand planer, you can use that. So obviously, unless you have an industrial sized planer. It's just not practical to be planing a board this big, so I'm just going to be using a hand plane combination between a number 7 jack plane, a number 4, and a number 3. Alright, so we have the tabletop glued up. I'm just not gonna level the whole underside of it, just because for a workbench it's not really gonna be necessary. So I'm just gonna take the hand plane and level out the sections that are gonna be actually touching the apron of the workbench. So let's do that real quick, and then we'll use some pocket hole screws to screw the whole thing in. Okay, so now I'm going to attach the tabletop onto the frame. So one thing that happened is the frame moved slightly out of square. What I'm going to do to square it back up is take the inside measurement from here to here, use that as a reference point to set a line on the inside of the table. So that line needs to be 2.75 inches from the edge, and then I'm going to use a 2x4 as a reference edge on one side. Then I'm going to pull the tabletop square and use a couple pocket hole screws to tie everything in. And I just made a series of pocket holes to hold this apron, and then this apron and the one on the other side are gonna create an equidistant edge for the table, and then pull the whole thing back into square. So to finish organization next to the bench, I decided to get one of these drawer dividers by Acro Mills. This one was on Amazon for about $49.99. It has 24 drawers. It also comes with these dividers, 4 of them that you can insert in here, and I think you can also buy extra dividers online as well. It also comes with these smaller dividers, but I believe that these are for only the model that contains the smaller drawers, so you can't actually use it on this model. Basically, I'm just gonna mount this. So the mounting holes on this are roughly 19 inches apart. Most studs are 16 inches on center. So the fastest way that I found to transfer over accurate holes so that this slides on with no fuss is to use a piece of masking tape. So I generally take a piece of masking tape. So the fastest way that I found to transfer these holes onto your wall is to take a piece of masking tape, and then I try to line up the very top with the very top of the hole. Then from here, I'll take a pencil or a Sharpie and I'll just trace those mounting holes. I have a couple of scrap pieces of plywood that I'm going to use as backing boards to drill into the studs. That way I have a nice secure place to hang this from, and I'm not hanging it straight from the drywall. Next, I'll take my tape where I just marked my bolt holes and just transfer that straight onto the board. And I've already leveled the board, so no need to level the bolt holes once I stick this on. From here, I take a sharp awl, or I'm just using the point of a compass here, and mark the center mark. Now I'll position my second mounting plate to be flush with the bottom. And it's that simple. No fuss trying to mark holes. Simple, repeatable process, and nice and sturdy. So now I have a spot to put all my little metal doohickeys, things that like to accumulate all over the workbenches in the shop. So the workbench is built. I threw a coat of polyurethane on there. Also reorganized all these cabinets to have finishing supplies, rags, and hung up a place to hold hardware. So in the next video, I'm going to show you how I turned this bandsaw into a mobile piece of equipment, and I'm also going to be putting some adjusting feet on there. That way I can level it with this existing workbench, and I can use it as an outfeed table. I can use it as a side support. I'm also going to show you how I'm going to make a table saw stand for an existing workbench. There's a lot of different table saw workbench videos out there, and a lot of them are really great, but most of them that I saw rely on building a workbench from scratch and incorporating a miter saw and a table saw into it. I'm going to show you how I'm going to take this existing workbench that I'm not going to get rid of and incorporate a table saw into it that folds and is also super sturdy. Also coming up, I have some really cool projects in the works. I have a van build out that I'm going to be doing. So I'm going to be going through all the electrical, installing overhead cabinets, a bed, cabinets, a kitchen, solar panels, the whole build. Also, I have some furniture projects coming up that are going to be really cool. I'm making a side table from some quarter sawn white oak, so I'm going to take you guys through the whole process of that, and that should be really fun, so stay tuned.